Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. Tap the app on your device, swipe to reveal the Eyewitness menu, and follow the instructions.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Let's share with you now some of those pictures that were sent into our portal. And we can begin with this one from Apapa Road in Ebutemeta area of Lagos State, showing a bad road. Our Eyewitness reporter wants the road and the drains fixed. Next is this photo from Ota Ayobo Road in Ogun State. According to our Eyewitness reporter, this vehicle got stuck because of the poor state of the road. He wants the state government to come to their aid, and quickly too. From Makudi, the Benue state capital, comes this image of a gridlock, which according to our Eyewitness account is caused by a bad road. And he reports that things have been this way for over 5 days, and he's calling on the relevant authorities to do something about it. Our next photo is from Maryland in Ikeja, that's here in Lagos, showing a vehicle which our Eyewitness reporter said had driven dangerously, almost colliding with other vehicles. He's calling motorists to be careful to prevent accidents. And finally is this video from Awolowo Way in Ikorodu area of Lagos, showing 4 men on a motorcycle. Our Eyewitness reporter condemns acts like this and says they should be discouraged.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Thanks for your pictures, and do send us some more. Research by Transparency International does not seem to agree with British Prime Minister David Cameron's description of Nigeria and Afghanistan as fantastically corrupt nations in the world. The Berlin-based global graft watchdog annually ranks countries according to perceived corruption within the public sector. Transparency International Global Chair Jose Ugas also says first world countries are guilty of aiding corruption.
2/3 of the world is affected by significant corruption. So yes, there are countries with fantastic levels of corruption, and some of them appear in the third world and in the poor part of our globe, but this would not happen with the complicit participation of the first world, developed countries, where that's all those monies. In the case of Nigeria, 40% of the population living in poverty, and $150 billion left the country through illicit flows. Where did that money go? It went to the United States. It came here for property and lavishly lives of those that are under corrupt. So what we expect here is not pointing some countries or some people being corrupt, but to see and find what can we do together.
Now, the British Prime Minister's comment about Nigeria has drawn various reactions from Nigerians all over the world. But as Transparency International points out, no country is immune to corruption. Our correspondent Amarachi Ubani reports.
Successful cabinet meeting this morning. We're talking about our anti-corruption summit. We've got the Nigerians. We've got some leaders of some fantastically corrupt countries.
An unguarded comment made by the British Prime Minister David Cameron that has drawn reactions thousands of miles away in Nigeria and around the world. Once again, Nigeria is back in the spotlight as the world focuses on one of its most challenging problems, corruption. While some agree that the country is indeed corrupt, they do not agree it is fantastically corrupt, as the British Prime Minister put it. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, commenting on his successor's comment, said, "I don't think that it's exactly news to everyone that there is an issue and a challenge of corruption in Nigeria. The important thing, obviously, is that there is a new mood in Nigeria against corruption, and the new president is a staunch fighter against it." Transparency International, which came quickly to Nigeria's defense, had a few months ago released a new corruption perception index, putting Nigeria, a country with a population of 158.4 million people, 136 on the list of 168, and scoring it 26 over 100. What is interesting to note is that while Britain did not make the list of 10 most corrupt countries in the world, it did not make the 10 least corrupt countries in the world either, where Denmark leads the pack. Britain, however, has been giving billions of pounds in aid to the 10 most corrupt countries in the world. The Department for International Development says it has spent £2.7 billion of aid money in the world's 10 most corrupt countries since David Cameron became Prime Minister. Nigeria and Afghanistan have received $2.3 billion of British aid since Mr. Cameron became Prime Minister. Though Britain's aid agency, the Department for International Development, does not hand money directly to national governments in the most corrupt countries, aid money is channeled through aid agencies or spent directly on projects that should benefit the nation's poor. President Muhammadu Buhari has begun to take steps to curtail the further enrichment of the wealthy through illegal means. It could take some time for the rest of the world to acknowledge that the continent's fortunes can indeed make its way back to the hands of its people. Amarachi Ubani, Channel Television News.
Now, the anti-corruption summit in London has thrown up a couple of issues. First is Nigeria's president saying he does not need an apology from anyone, but would rather have the United Kingdom return Nigeria's money stashed in UK banks. But more instructive is that there was a consensus at the summit that corruption is a global challenge which needs to be tackled by all, as we've reported already. Joining me now on the news at 10 to look at the issue of corruption and transparency is the former chairman, Transparency in Nigeria, General Ishola Williams. Thank you so much for joining us, General, on the news at 10.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Now, against the backdrop of Mr. Cameron's comments that you've seen there, let's look at Nigeria's corruption status. Where would you say we are right now?
See, I think one thing that we need to agree on, especially for those who have been following the anti-corruption effort from the part of not only Nigeria but most of the developing countries, is that we have moved from one stage of which countries in Europe, except for United States of America, countries in Europe were getting tax allowances for giving bribes to get contracts in developing countries. Now they can no longer do that in Britain, in Germany, in France, because if you do that, you go to court, just like you do in the United States, in the Foreign Corrupt Bribery, Act. Now we have moved to another stage in which now it's not easy for you to carry money, go abroad, hire a lawyer, anonymously. The lawyer will just put the money in the bank for you, give you a number, and anytime you want to claim the money, nobody needs to know who you are before you put the money. Now, you cannot do that anymore. Second thing is that you cannot carry any amount of money above a certain amount of money abroad, and you say you want to put it in the bank. Where did you get the money from? That is the next question. But most importantly, the stage we have reached now is that if Nigeria, and Obasanjo used that very well because he was one of the founding members of Transparency International, okay? And what did he do? Take your people to court here to prove that they really stole some money from the public treasury. And once you can prove that, and they are convicted by the court, you can now present that to the government overseas and say, Switzerland, we have so much amount of money with you, taken by one of our countrymen or woman to your country illicitly or illegally. And then they will say, okay, we agree. You bank, is it true that this guy has this amount of money with you, and this is the number? And then they will return the money to you. But what has helped us very much is 9/11. 9/11 has helped because of stopping illicit financing of terrorists. And because you want to stop illicit financing of terrorists, you need to control the movement of money in the banks all over the world.
So what you're saying is that we were making progress. There's a progression from where it used
internationally.
To be. Okay.
For countries who really want to fight corruption. Therefore, the onus of responsibility lies on us, Nigerians now, to be able to deal with the problem internally. But you cannot deal with the problem if you have problem of rule of law. And what do I mean by that? inequality before justice, and that's impunity, which we need to tackle. If we don't tackle impunity, then we continue to have the same problem that we have. But fortunately for us now, we have a president who has decided to remain above the fray of corrupt practices within Nigeria, and therefore is able to tackle the issue of impunity. And most importantly, unlike other preceding governments, he has not been interfering with the FCC to stop that or do this or go to this or go to that. That is what is key. So there's a political will now on the part of whoever is the head of state, but can he do it alone? That is the problem.
That's where I was also going to as well, because he said he doesn't want an apology and we want our monies back. And I saw you giggle when you listened to that. What would that process involve, and how quick? Obviously, he can't do it alone. How quickly do you think that money can come back to us?
Now, very good question, madam. That is one of the key areas. You know why? It is because our lawyers in the country have not, and Nigerian lawyers too, who are practicing abroad, have not keyed into the whole issue of how we can trace, confirm, and then be able to apply the processes of law to be able to, to get the money back. And what has been happening is that those lawyers in those countries that have the money are really making a lot of money from helping us to get our money back, because it's compulsory that you must hire a lawyer in those countries to be able to go through the court processes and bring it back. But it takes too long. And that's why the president himself was talking about it's a tedious process. So one of the things that the president should ask for in London is this, is that cut down this process, shorten this process. And when the process is shortened, then bringing the money back is very easy. But what they are saying on their own part is this, is that we have returned some money before. What happened to them?
Thank you so much. Former Chairman, Transparency in Nigeria, General Ishola Williams, for sharing your thoughts on the News at 10. Thank you, sir. Now, agriculture and its value chain will continue to drive industrialization in Ogun State, and that's according to the State Governor, Ibikunle Amosun. He was speaking at the closing ceremony of the state's third Investors Forum, and he adds that infrastructure development will also be a priority of his administration. A panel of speakers drawn from the manufacturing sector also asked the government to encourage collaboration over waste disposal and private power generation.
As well, what I just want us to do is, whilst we
It's the closing day of the Ogun State Investors Forum.
That Ogun State has the potential, and that's the way it must be.
thank you.
Once again, the Cultural Center in Kuto, Abeokuta, the state capital, played host to industrialists, private sector practitioners, and government officials.
To the government of Ogun State.
Having done business in the state, these captains of industry can affirm that there's ease of doing business here.
Latching on to.
They're of the opinion that clustering gas-fired power and collaborating over waste disposal will push the frontiers of business.
Biomass, in other words, agricultural residues which are normally wasted and thrown away, can be collected by these smallholders and used to feed other industries for energy and ultimately for power. The same thing with municipal waste, the same thing with industrial waste. So I think one thing the government can do is put regulations in place to enable the collection of these various waste streams, and we can actually use that to empower and enrich the state.
Then our state needs to make sure that this power can be shared. So if I've got 10 megawatts and I'm actually only using 5 megawatts, and the next 2-3 industries need just 2 megawatts, let them be able to come to the guy with the excess power to utilize.
I think that what we can do, not just as Unilever, but the state can help in this, is more collaborative discussion with the private sector about what are we going to do around the logistics of disposal, not just so that we can get more profitable because we're using less energy and less water and less materials, but so that we also protect the physical environment in which people have to operate and people have to live.
Can you please join me in welcoming the Honorable Minister, Chief Audu Ogbe.
After the feedback session, the Minister of Agriculture, Ogun, shares his experience on how to drive the sector as part of efforts to diversify the economy.
Our development effort can never go really far if we do not involve the rural areas. And the business of the rural areas is essentially agriculture.
Mr. Ogun believes that young people must latch on to the opportunities this sector provides.
So young people, before you reach my age and acquire the gray hair on my head, let me say to you, you have to join and participate in agriculture. Why? Our population is rising very fast. By 2050, Nigeria will be 450 million, if not more.
To wrap up the event, the state governor, Eyewitness, said agriculture will always remain a priority and infrastructure will continue to receive attention.
Agriculture must be the driver, because agriculture that will lead us to industrialization, that will take the advantage, full advantage of the value chain that agriculture offers. That is what we seek to achieve. I believe that infrastructure is key as well. They are catalysts that will spawn development, that will bring about development. Without them, I don't think people will want to even come there, really.
At expanding in Ogun State.
For 2 days, the third Ogun Investment Summit focused on the need to make the environment more friendly and the creation of transformation through agriculture.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Nigeria's crude oil output nears lowest level in 22 years as Shell shuts down key pipeline. That's Beyond Business. Please join us again.